Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tara and I'm a Catholic revert. And today I'm going to be talking to you about confession and specifically what it was like for me to go to confession for the first time in 15 years. As any Catholic who returned to the church knows, going to confession is a really important step in becoming an active member of the church again. And since I had been away for so long, one thing that I knew was that it wasn't going to cut it to just kind of go to confession hours at my local church and just have a very quick 5-minute confession. I knew I just had a lot of baggage from all those years, emotionally, spiritually, and I knew that I needed more than that. And so I decided to make an appointment for a private confession. And we actually live near a retreat center that's run by the Redemptorist Fathers. And my dad actually was the one who suggested that I make an appointment to see one of the priests there. And so I took his advice. I scheduled a private confession with one of the priests. And on the day of my confession, it was my dad actually who drove me over to the retreat center. And what was really kind of interesting was that even though I hadn't been to confession in 15 years or more, I actually wasn't really nervous or scared about the prospect. I really just felt like I wanted to release all of this baggage that was still weighing me down on my mind and my soul. And so I was really hoping that taking this step would help me to let go of all that. So the day I arrived at the retreat center, it was an early spring day. It was a beautiful sunny day. It was very, very windy. We were by the beach, so there was this great ocean breeze. And so my dad waited in the car, and then I went up to the door and I rang the bell, and one of the priests answered, and he was very friendly and very welcoming. And so he led me just into the retreat center and down this little hallway and into what looked like a kind of a conference room, I guess. It had these nice comfortable chairs and coffee table and some lamps, and he invited me to sit down in one of the chairs, and then he sat down in a chair across from me. And the interesting thing about this was that it actually felt more like I was going to be in a therapy session, but in a good way. I felt really comfortable, and my priest was he was very welcoming, and he really was a good listener and really made me feel comfortable and safe. And the interesting thing too is that he didn't ask me to just start reciting the list of my sins, but rather he asked me to tell him a little bit about myself and about my story. And so I shared with him the whole story of how I fell away from the church, how I converted to Judaism, the struggles that I had finding acceptance, the really terrible relationship that I'd been in, and eventually how I came back to the church. And something else that really made a big impression on me was how when I explained to Father that one of the reasons that I hesitated in coming back was that I had this terrible fear that I would be betraying the Jewish people and the Jewish religion. And he said he could really understand why I would feel that way. And that really impressed me because it made me feel like I was being heard. And that was just so important. And he also assured me that I didn't have to give up the Jewish rituals and traditions that I loved either, that I could be a practicing Catholic and I could keep some Jewish traditions as well. And so that was really helped to put my mind at ease too. And after I explained my story, only then did he ask me for my confession. And so I made my confession, and and then he gave me absolution and made the sign of the cross over me. And as he did so, I really felt this tremendous weight lift off my shoulders and this amazing release, like all that baggage that I'd been carrying around was finally releasing me. And it was this unbelievable sense of freedom. And so then I asked Father, so now that I've done that, what do I have to do? How do I go back to being a member of the church? And he said, well, that was the most important step. You've done that. You went to confession, you received absolution, and now you're free to just start attending weekly Mass. You can start receiving communion again, and you're good to go. And I was really just amazed, actually, at how easy this was. And I couldn't get over it, actually. And when I said to Father, that's it, that's all I have to do. And he said to me, well, the thing is, you never really left. And you've always been part of this community. And when he said that, that just absolutely floored me. I had struggled for a long time to find acceptance in another community, and for it to be so easy for me to be fully accepted as part of the community, that just really meant so much to me. And I felt like, wow, I can really just be who I am, and I don't have to be hiding things anymore. I can just be exactly who I am. And that was just another absolutely incredible sense of freedom. And so that was what my first confession going back was like. And really, it couldn't have gone any better. And I'm just so very grateful that I had that experience. I'm very grateful to the priest who made me feel so welcomed and safe, and very grateful to my dad as well, who suggested that I go to this retreat center for my confession. And so that was my story, and I do want to just address a couple of things for people who maybe haven't been to confession in a really long time. A couple of things that I've heard, and one of the things is that a lot of people seem to have this real sense of fear, and like that they're going to be judged. And the thing that I wanted to say about that was going to confession is not a place, it's not a place where you're going to be judged. It's a place where you're going to be healed. It's a place of spiritual healing. And the priest who's there, he's really just kind of mediating between you and God, and he's really there to help you heal as well. And he's not there to judge you, and if you ever do have a priest that makes you feel judged, then he's not a good confessor, and I would definitely find someone else who makes you feel like you're safe and that you're completely accepted as you are. And Another thing that I would say too is that if it's been a long time since you've been to confession, I would say that making a private confession is really the way to go, because if you go to just the public confession hours at church, usually you only have a very short time with the priest. And if you've been away for a long time, chances are you have a lot of things that you really need to discuss and need to talk about. So if you have a retreat center near you, if you're lucky enough to live near one, I would definitely suggest making an appointment with one of the priests there. And if not, just any churches in your area, you should be able to call the office and make a private confession with one of the priests. So those are a couple of things I would say to people who are returning to the church or haven't been to confession again in a really long time. And the last thing that I really wanted to leave you with about kind of how to really think about confession is actually goes back to the Gospels and is in Jesus' parable about the prodigal son. And as you can imagine, after he had left his father's house, spent all his father's money, and lived this very decadent life, and now he regretted all that he had done, and he decided he was going to come home. And coming home, he had no idea what kind of reception he would get. And in fact, he thought he would be lucky if his father would just let him live as a servant in his home. And so you can imagine that as he was walking home, as he rounded that last corner and saw his house off in the distance, can imagine that he was probably filled with pretty intense fear and anxiety. And yet when his father saw him, his father ran out to meet him, and he threw his arms around him, and he hugged him, and he kissed him, and he absolutely rejoiced that his son had come back to him after all this time. And in thinking about confession, remember that God is that all-loving Father, and He's there, and He's waiting for you. And so confession, ultimately, it's a homecoming. It's a homecoming to the Father who loves you, and loves you in a way that we humans can't even fathom. That's how deep His love is. And so if you've been thinking about going to confession, but you're hesitating because it's a long time, I just want to say to be not afraid, because it's you're coming home to God, and He'll be there to welcome you with open arms. So that's my story, and those are some of my thoughts about confession, and I really hope that this video has been helpful to you. Thank you again for taking the time to listen, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my next video, where I talk about how my Catholic faith has helped me cope with my anxiety disorder. So take good care and have a blessed day.